Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very unique and interesting conversation on women and investing. First of all, let me introduce to you today's panel. We have here Mr. Swaroop Mohanty. He is the CEO of Mirae Asset India. And we have Ms. Preeti Gupta. She is the founder of Lakshmi, and she is also the she's the MD and the promoter of Anand Rathi Stockbroking. So welcome both of you. I am Suranjana Bhattakur. I head business development at Mirae Asset. So I would like to just set a context to this conversation first before we take it forward. I think, firstly, there are a couple of things that I would like to cover. Firstly, that, there's a large percentage of women in India as well as globally who do not take their investment decisions on their own. It's only, data says that only, 33% of women, take their own investment decisions. A more alarming data, I would say, is that, when there's a very large percentage of working women who do not take their investment decisions on their own. In fact, in India, it's said that just 77% of working women actually do not take their own investment decisions. They rely on either their fathers or their spouses. Taking into consideration that these women would actually be taking a lot of significant decisions at their workplace. So why not take their investment decisions? So that's a question that comes out. I think secondly, also to bring forth the fact that, women possess certain characteristics which sort of predispose them in a way to be better investors. For example, women tend to be savers by nature. So we've seen our mothers, our grandmothers, whatever money that they had available to them, they've always, possibly stashed away a little bit as a saving over a period. And that's something that, we tend to imbibe from them as well. I also think that, women, in fact, I'll take the liberty to say that women tend to be a little more disciplined when it comes in general in life, and when it comes to investing as well. They usually tend to be, they tend to invest for the long haul, and they tend to be more committed as well. Also, the fact that women are usually more goal driven. So whenever they are, they're not very impulsive when it comes to investing. They are usually more, they become committed, like I said, and they usually tend to trade less, and unless they reach their financial goals, they tend to stay invested for longer periods. And also women tend to be conservative. I think to take away the negative connotation of that, to see the positive side, I think women from a very young age are taught to be more cautious, and that's a very, very important thing when it comes to investing. I think these are certain characteristics that women inherently possess. And thirdly, and I think most importantly, to bring out the fact that, women in general, when compared to men, they have a it's much more important for them to be able to do their financial planning and retirement planning well, because women in general in India as well as globally have a longer lifespan as compared to their male counterparts, and also that could have correspondingly higher expenses which could come up later in life in terms of medical exigencies. So it's very important, considering working women, a lot of times they tend to, they actually end up possibly accumulating lesser at the end of their working life because they take these breaks, etc. So it just becomes very important that they plan well and they recognize, what is the requirement that they have going forward. Also, because we now live in possibly more nuclear families. So the responsibility of the individual does go up to that extent. So I think just to start off with this conversation, I would like to ask Swaroop the first question. Trends are changing, and so are the patterns of investing, right? So I just wanted to understand from you that, what could be the economic impact of women actually going ahead and investing?
Suranjana, thank you for that large question. It's a very large question, but a very important question. But at the outset, I'd like to express my gratitude towards Preeti for allowing us to be on the Lakshmi platform. It's an absolute honor. to be on the platform, and it's huge for me to speak on this subject, a subject which is very pertinent, a subject which is a subject for tomorrow. And the question you asked is very, very imbibed in that particular sort of environment, because let's look at it from a bottoms-up perspective. The broad population of, say, India consists of 48% of women. And let's face it, the big part of that population has come from a regime where the male child was preferred over a girl child. And I'm just being brutally honest. And when we discuss finance and money, let's just keep emotions out of it. Let's just look at the reality. It's just in the last 10, 15 years, and rightfully so, that this misconception over a male child over a girl child has been rightfully squashed, and hence what will happen in the next 10, 20 years is a very different demography of women composition of this overall population. That's at a bottom. Let's look at it one step forward as to the earning women. I mean, you've been part of our organization, and let me tell you something. We've been an organization which is trying to restructure and come back into the market over the last 8, 9 years. Very shocking for me to look back and give you the data that 5 years or maybe 4.5 years ago, our women composition of our entire man force, as we call it, I'm sorry that I have to use the word man force at the bottom. It shows how patriarchal we are as a society, but it'll all change. Okay, was just 6%. Today, we are 30% of our manpower are women. And let me tell you that we don't have a laid down policy that we will hire women. We go out to hire the best person. And in the last four years, invariably, 75% of the person who we think are best suited for the job are women. Right? Look at the impact of that. It means that out of 100 people earning in a small organization like ours, 38 are earning women. And that leads to your basic conclusion of what you put forward, that there is a need for women to invest. Just the fact that women will outlive men. And let me tell you, at an old age, and keeping emotions aside, if there's one thing that you need, very bluntly speaking, is money. So the need for investing or the need for retirement planning for women is far higher than that of men, right, at the outset. Now, let's look at this growing population investing. And when I look at investing, it's not just investing in stock markets or the debt market or capital market. It's investing in business. We have a great example like Preeti sitting with us, who's bringing this massive change. And that's a change which a lady can get. I mean, think beyond just the bottom line or the balance sheet. And that's what women are all about. So the impact of women, and at the search of data, if you go down and search for data as to how many women actually invest, how many men actually invest, because of the skewedness of the demography is not actually very substantial. I feel, and the fact that we are having this discussion and people are coming and listening to us at this moment, this story is just starting. And when women start investing, I do agree with you that they do it far sensibly than we men do, because it is inherent for women to be disciplined. The only quality required for investing is discipline. And when they do, the impact will be not only on the capital markets, but on society as large, on the business environment as large, and ethics of business at large, and for the country as large. That will be a substantial and phenomenal change that will happen not only to India, but across the globe. This is not a question which is just restricted to India. So I am actually looking forward to women contributing at a far larger space, and look at what's happened to the country as such. I mean, across the society now we are seeing women taking center stage, and such a welcome thing to see. I remember having asked my cousin when I had gone to Delhi during the time of Sheila Dikshit as the chief minister, and I was telling her that women is, the city is looking so pretty. She said, no wonder that we have a woman at the helm of affairs. The city has to look pretty. So it's just not about investing as such. It is about broad society, and I see a dramatic shift. I think a sea shift happening when that happens, and as a man, I look forward to that very, very expectantly. So, from what I have said, I am more intrigued in asking the right person, Preeti, this very pertinent question. And that is, do you think, Preeti, that, there is a difference between the way men invest or women invest, or how do you look at investing being different from a man to that of a woman?
Thank you. First of all, Swaroop and Suranjana, thank you for being on this platform. Thank you for becoming part of a conversation that Lakshmi feels is very, very necessary to have now. And I'm so glad that, both of you also agree that, this is a space that needs to be, kind of addressed, spoken about. And I think just your question itself, right? The recognition that investing for women is different than investing is for men. And, that is the first step, to recognize that women do look at investing very, very differently than men. So this was the crystallization of at least my experience in financial services, to say that we were just not able to speak to women the way we were able to speak to men. And I think there are a lot of reasons for this. To begin with, one is the mindset. I think women look at investing in a very, very different way than men do. The world out there says that women are risk averse. I don't agree. I think women are very risk aware. They will take steps to invest or put in their money after weighing their risks properly. So they're risk aware. Then we're very, very goal oriented. So our investing is always towards certain goals. And interestingly, a lot of the goals are actually very family driven. So you rightly said, right? When a woman invests her money, she looks at, family goals, education of the children, a family home. So all of that investment actually comes back to the home, the family, and the community at large. So very goal oriented. And so Ranjana, I think you rightly said, far more disciplined. In fact, the numbers from AMFI actually tell you that while the number of women who are investing are lower, but the AUMs that women have, the average AUM of a woman is higher than that of a man. So which itself tells you that if we've decided to do an SIP, we will stick by it, right? So the discipline is far larger and it is showing in numbers. And I think one of the key aspects here is that we don't talk about this very often, but women actually act, when you're under crisis or stress, in stressful situations, women actually have a far more balanced approach. So, when you see markets fall, markets rise, you'll see that the way they approach that situation will be very different. And I think that's well proven, in a lot of situations. So that's about mindsets. The reason that women need to look at investment differently is more because of the life stages that they have, which are very different to men. So, for us, there is marriage, there is, childbirth, there is a lot of situations that, particularly in the Indian context, where careers take a bit of a backseat. So our career slows down. Our career peaks are actually much, much earlier than men. So statistics say that career peaks for women are at 40, whereas for men it is around 50, right? So that itself makes a lot of difference in the money that we earn. And like you rightly said, we need to save and earn more because we might have, chances are we'll have a longer retirement. So our need for that money is important. So our life stages are very, very different. And therefore, the way you look at money, the way you plan your money, the way you invest your money is also very different than the way you would do it for men. And therefore, I think in the entire space of things, the way we look at it is different, but also it's far more needed, actually. The art of investing needs to be far more or much largely adopted by women than for men because of all of these reasons. And I think the fact that it is very community, society, family driven, I think you rightly pointed out, Swaroop, that, that is where I think when women start investing, you'll see the entire family, kind of rise. They used to say that you educate a girl and you educate a family. You start investing, the woman starts investing, and actually the family wealth really goes up. So that's our experience and my thoughts on it. But at this point, very, very, I would find it very pertinent to ask Suranjana, because she comes from this space. She's been part of financial services. Suranjana, how do you think women can, more actively manage their finances and independently manage their finances? Because that's where the large gap has been.
Yeah. I think, Preeti, like you very rightly pointed out that, obviously women tend to have possibly lower lifetime savings as compared to their male counterparts. Because they may be taking, breaks in between, or they may also, obviously the pay parity, etc., is one part of it, but also because sometimes you take a break either to take care of your children or elders or both, and you may not come back to the working population. So obviously, one thing is very clear, that since women's earnings tend to peak out earlier, like you said, I think one thing very important to recognize is that possibly start early. I think that is something that I would really believe in, that, the earlier you start, the better it is to be able to accumulate wealth. Secondly, I think women are cautious with their investing, like we discussed. They are conservative with their investing, but sometimes it goes, a little too far. And a lot of times, women don't want to invest at all. They will want to just hold cash, which I think definitely needs to change. That is something that, we need to be very clear that to be able to make money, we'll have to invest money. And I think I also feel that women tend to be more patient compared to men, right? So therefore, this is a completely personal opinion, but I feel that, women could be actually more comfortable with growth assets, like, equities, etc. Because if they are not trading very often, if they are staying invested longer, to make wealth, they can actually be more comfortable with growth assets, which of course, people have to take into consideration their risk appetite and how much they're able to allocate to this. But I think lastly, I also feel it's very important that, people educate themselves. So if you are saying that growth assets are good, and then why not know about things, be aware about things? I think it becomes very, very important to be able to recognize what is around you, educate yourself, and then you will automatically have the confidence to actually go ahead and make those decisions. You'll be able to, confidently decide that, this is what you want to get into, and you want to get into for long term. So I think we as women, I also feel that, they're taking up responsibility, creating awareness. It also comes in some way to us as financial services women. So I think coming to the corporate world, I think, Preeti, I had a question for you that, when it comes to gender diversity in the corporate world, numbers suggest that clearly there have been, it's growing towards being more inclusive, but still there is a long way to go. So just to understand from you, in the financial services ecosystem, what do you feel is, is it inclusive enough right now, or there's still, what are your views on that?
So clearly not inclusive enough, right? Which is why, Lakshmi was born. But also women within the financial services, it's very interesting to see. It corresponds to what, the numbers today, the macro numbers look like, the women in workforce. So for example, it's actually quite disappointing to know that the number of women in the workforce in India itself has decreased, right? From say a 36% in 2006, we've actually come down to a 23% in the workforce. And in financial services, even lesser, right? I think we average about 14%, which is very, very dismal. And interesting again, that during bull runs, we've seen that the number of women in the workforce increases because they're essentially, essentially in terms of sales, marketing, those are the roles that women have taken on. I can tell you for sure that over, the 2 decades that I've been in financial services, even women within financial services, because they are more front-ending roles, I've seen very few women kind of take on or don the mantle of saying, yes, I want to invest for myself. And till you don't do it right, you're not speaking to the world about it, which is why I've realized that, therefore, because of less women in the financial services workforce, there are lesser women being spoken to outside. And that exists everywhere. So even if you look at entrepreneurship, if you look at businesses that are run by women today, I think there are just about 14% businesses in the country that are run by women. So just the lack of getting the right financing, funding, all of that. So we struggle at every level. And I think that really will rapidly change. And I see it happening very soon. You know, this entire rise of she economy that we see around us. So there was a time when, you know, interestingly, when car manufacturers tested their seat belts only with men, or medical testing was done only with men, you know. And it's interesting because all this while nobody really paid attention to that, but now those stats are coming out, and now, you know, just that awareness of creating gender diversity, not just for the sake of equality, but actually saying that what, you know, there is a lot that women bring to the table, and therefore gender diversity is actually healthy. I think that is changing. That mind shift is happening very, very rapidly. And I think, you know, while like Swaroop said that, you know, at Mirai, for example, you didn't go out and say that we need to get women, but we found qualifying, you know, more women qualifying for the roles that we started out with. I think increasingly we will find that happen, where, you know, companies will go out and say that, yes, we want to, you know, and there will be role specific as well, saying that a woman is best suited for this role, getting women on boards, women mentoring women. I mean, today for me, for example, Lakshmi is an example of saying that, yes, we realize there's a gap, and, you know, we need to mentor women to start their investing journey. Also, I think let's not forget that women represent, you know, the largest emerging global market segment now. And I think that's where the rise of she economy comes in. I think COVID, to my mind, has also been a great example of, you know, while COVID itself was gender neutral, but the impact of COVID was actually not gender neutral. It was very, very harsh on women. So women lost more jobs. Pay cuts were harsher for women. But the positive of, you know, of that has been that today most companies have realized that, you know, flexible working hours, work from home, you know, the gig economy, all of that actually will now, you know, kind of make it more comfortable for it to be inclusive for women. You know, all the friction that women had in terms of really working, or, you know, why did we see that 36% of women in workforce come down to 23%? And I think the other reason will also be the need to actually go out and, you know, earn money for women. Because as we see, you know, COVID has led to falling incomes for, you know, across the board. And therefore, I think the need for a second bread earner, etc., will just make it very, very imperative. So I see a huge potential, and I see this rapidly changing within financial services, as well as the need to talk to women about financial services. All of that will be a rapid change. So I hope that answers your questions, Ranjana. And we'll take it forward. I would love to ask Swaroop. So women have started their investment journey, but typically I've seen, so we did a survey, Swaroop, interestingly, before we launched Lakshmi. And you know, majority of the women said with great flair and confidence that, yes, we invest. And when we probed a little deeper, they said, yes, we invest in fixed deposits, and we invest in insurance, and we invest, you know, we regularly buy jewelry. So that's gold investment for us. So I think it's mostly been traditional instruments for women, because, like, you know, those were instruments we understood. And like I said, we are risk aware. Women tend to, you know, weigh their risk and say, okay, it's better to go for what we understand, as opposed to really going for something that we don't really understand. And I was very, very powered when I saw, you know, when I first met Suranjana, and she showed me the entire literature that Mirai has done, you know, on women and women understanding mutual funds, and the need for them to go towards, you know, the more newer and new age current investment products. So I would love to hear from you, because, you know, you've Mirai has done that work. I'd love to hear from you. How does mutual funds become a great way of investing for women, and especially, you know, women who are just new to investing? Because like I said, we are risk aware. Why does mutual fund become a great platform for women to start or begin their journey of investing with? And also what, does a scenario like COVID, is it to be considered while taking that investment decision?
Yeah, I mean, Preeti, thank you for the question, because when you look at investing in general, and this is very gender neutral sort of statement, is that traditionally we've been more attuned towards investing in the fixed asset side, and that's true for both men and women. I will disagree that women only invest there. Men also invest in property and gold as the two traditional, because that is, let's face it, when you look at investing in India, we are probably the 8th or the 9th generation property owner, or probably 8th or 9th generation, or probably hundreds of years of gold investing, right? And I always give the example of gold investing as a phenomenal case study. Look at that investing style. Somebody, a financial advisor like you in the ancestral times, has said the one day of a year is the day we dedicate to that particular asset. And that one day, because it being a commodity, let me tell you, without much knowledge, the demand being highest for that commodity would be the price being at the peak. But do we care? Do we bother? Because somebody has told us, and it's practice, you just go and buy that asset called gold on Akshaya Tritiya. Then the financial advisor has added another thing, that you cannot sell this asset. It's added a superstition that you have to hold it. Yeah, it's kind of a financial security which is practiced not only from the family up to a nation level, that the gold is a very good hedge against all exigencies or any emergencies. So you don't sell it. And when you buy and hold a good asset over generations, wealth is created. And that is true for any sort of asset. I just heard my wife last week on the phone that, what is the thing about that gold? Most of my gold is in the locker and I've never used it. And that would be true about everybody, right? So my humble opinion is the first starting point next Akshaya Tritiya, since there is enough gold with everybody, is probably shift to the financial side. That's a good start to make. But from a mutual fund perspective, whatever has been discussed till now, I have seen that happening in my house. Both my parents are retired professors, and till the bulk of my career, I saw my mom depending on my father for investing and all that. But when they retired, I sort of set it right that both of you invest in your own way. And let me tell you, my mom retired 2 years later than my father. All their money is in mutual funds, all their money, the retirement kitty, everything. They have a pension coming. So they realized that pension would take care of their life and this would be the kitty. My mom's investment kitty is 3 times that of my father. Because of all that has been discussed till now, she's more aware of the market. I agree with you that women are not risk, averse. They are risk aware. And that has made her have a far more diversified portfolio. Incidentally, she has more mid and small cap than I have in my portfolio, really. I mean, the kind of steps she takes to her portfolio is very different. But after 7-8 years of investing, she told me one day that she now wants to travel. And today, the visit from the travel agent is more than the financial agent into our house, let me tell you. She travels at least 4 to 5 times a year on her own. My father is a little unwell, so she has to do it. She's found friends, but all her money for her travel comes from redeeming her mutual fund excesses, nothing from her pension. And that is where I like to, sort of start my discussion, because the beauty of mutual funds is it has a product for every risk profile, for every need, for every tenure. Typically, the traditional thought is mutual funds are risky. Let me tell you, there is no investment barring the sovereign which is not risky. Every investment comes with its own risk profile, and it's very important to match your own risk profile to the underlying investing risk profile. It's not that gold was not risky. For 6 years, we didn't see any money in gold. It's not that properties were not risky. We are actually selling property at a discount in Mumbai at this moment. So we're seeing a different cycle in those two traditional investment opportunities where money making was taken for granted. So the volatility is now coming out in front of people. And the best way to do it is either learn the process yourself and do it directly, or come to a professional who knows or does this job. So the thing that I'd like to leave behind is when you do your overall portfolio, the beauty of going through mutual funds is it is risk mitigated. and then you have a proper product catering to your own risk profile across the length and breadth of the market. You want to own gold, you can own it through us. You want to own property, you can own it through us. You want to own stocks, you can own it through us. Or you want to be just in debt, and with debt, where you want the capital preserved, you can have it through us. Or you want to take a little bit of market risk, you can have it through us. So because of this flexibility and this vast availability of products to cater to every need of yours, it is pertinent that you do it through mutual funds. It is very easy to form a portfolio. The process is very simple. Ask yourself why you are investing. That is the fundamental question. If you don't have a why to your investing, keep the money in the bank. Otherwise, it's like the great Christopher Columbus. He set out to look for India. He found the red Indian, and he still believes after his death that is the India. Okay. He didn't know where he was going. He just said, "Main aa raha hu." So you have to find a way to investing. And once you know why you are investing, where you are investing is something which you, Preeti, at your organization are doing so successfully. That's not the bigger question. Invariably, the questions come to us from across. Hey, what is your best scheme? Does it matter what my best scheme is? Is that best scheme suitable to you is the more important question. Once you do that and answer your question, which is very personal because your life is very different from mine, the rest is easy. So my humble request to all viewers is just answer the why of investing. The rest between Preeti and myself, we can take care. And Suranjana, we are well equipped to. That's a very easy part. Because the why is everybody's own personal life. And everybody's personal life is very different. And everybody's why is right. So you can find a solution to mutual funds through your whys, but the why is your part. And my humble request and endeavor would be to ask yourself. It's life learning. And as Preeti rightfully said, the difference between men and women is when the woman discusses the why, it will be more for the family. The man can discuss a why on his whim. If I give you my whys, they are more my whim than my family. That's the reality. So it's very important. So answer your why. The mutual funds are always there to answer that why once that is put on the table. So from here, I hope that answers you, Preeti, and I go into my next question, and that is for you, back to you, Preeti, because data says that a very small percentage of women use professional financial advisors, and also many of them being comfortable with female financial advisors. But a very small percentage of financial advisors today are females or male, women. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I think, somewhere that whole idea of managing, so that's the dichotomy, right? I've always said Lakshmi is called Lakshmi because we pray to Goddess Lakshmi for wealth. But when it comes to managing our money, we always feel that, somebody out there who's essentially male is probably better at it. See, the financial services industry, like we shared numbers earlier, has always been male dominated. And I think gradually things there are also changing. I think having said that, I've always felt that, as women, the orientation was so strong to say that, the managing of money is a role that is best handled by the male member in the family. Whether it's your father, brother, sometimes like I said, we spoke to a lot of women. They said, oh, my cousin, he's an LIC agent. He tells me where to invest my money. So that kind of brings home the fact that there is so little confidence, such little confidence in ourselves to say, yes, it is my life, my money. I should probably be in a better place to understand where to put it, right? So that, I think, is part of orientation that needs to change. I think we've had a generation which pushed and, encouraged women to study further, higher education, make for great careers. But unfortunately, none of our, even our educational institutes or technical institutes, higher education institutes talk about, talk about taking care of your money, or the money that you've earned. So there's no talk of investing. It all stops till the buck stops till earning your money. And therefore that's a disconnect, right? I think increasingly families are starting to have these conversations, managing money is becoming a dinner table conversation. And if not yet, it soon will. And, at Lakshmi, we encourage that to be discussed with your children. There was a time when I was growing up where if money conversations were had, children were shooed away, okay, we are talking money. And then when the son grew up, he was kind of brought into the fold. Acha, it's a money issue, hamare family ka hai, so you must understand. But the girl was always thought as somebody who will get married and, leave. And therefore, why should she get into all of this? So I think that surely is undergoing a change, not as fast as we would want it to, but which is where Lakshmi comes in, right? To bridge that gap of saying that, women and investing. And I think as far as a financial advisor or women financial advisors are considered, very pertinent to have women financial advisors, because they, like we discussed, they understand needs of, the women life stages, how they need to look at money, that balance between risk and, risk averse and risk aware. But I think what is also happening is more and more today, there's, Lakshmi is a digital platform. So today, even if we have 4 financial advisors, the reach is so much larger, right? And women today are the highest users of smartphones in our country. So their ability to really use these platforms, whether it is social media, whether it is, platforms like Lakshmi, is so much just the aptitude and the ability to use them is so much higher that I believe that even today, the number of female advisors that we have, women advisors that we have today, their reach has really expanded. It is more up to the women out there to say, okay, this is available now for me very easily without any friction. I don't have to go anywhere. There is enough advice that comes to me if I reach for it. And second, I think also platforms have made, like you said, one part of the job is to decide, which are the products, what do you invest in, etc. But really helping them also understand why you're investing. What are you investing for? I think so. Joining those dots is very important, which I think women can do very well for women from their experience. So for example, the core of Lakshmi is a community where women are advising women. They may not be financial advisors, but if somebody has invested their money, they help to mentor other women also in that journey, saying that, look, I invested money here. And it's very interesting, the questions that come up. It's a place, if it's a community of women discussing money, which is actually unheard of. You won't find communities. There are communities discussing relationships, lifestyle, etc., but you will not see communities discussing money. But here is a place where women are without being, there's no fear of being judged. And very candidly asking that, this is the money that I earn. This is what my husband earns. How do you think I should manage this money? What part of this money should go here? We are renting a house. So the kind of questions that come up are just amazing, and the answers therefore. So you have a woman actually has 15 different perspectives, of course, to understand and take cues from. And then, of course, there is an online platform that helps you connect those dots and asks you the right questions. So I think the number of women, more and more women are taking up the role of financial advisors. I think that is increasing because of the whole digitization of the services now. But it needs more and more women to step up and say that, yes, I want to make use of that service. I understand that it's needed. So I think it's both ways, a lot of education, literacy, awareness that needs to be done, which is why I think we are here, engaging in this conversation. So one of the important things, Swaroop, that we also realized in our conversation with women was, like you rightly said, one of the biggest friction points so far was that financial advisors, so male financial advisors typically, or the way the industry was constituted was that the first question that they would ask a woman is, what's your risk appetite? You ask every investor, right? What's your risk appetite? And that was actually the first friction point, right? The minute you asked a woman, Acha, you need to tell me how much risk you can take. She was like, I'm all right. My money is okay in fixed deposits. I don't need to take any risk. And I think SEBI and the entire ecosystem has been continuously working to make that more transparent, to understand what are you getting into far better, and the latest of which has been the riskometer, which is a very, very interesting concept. So, could you shed some light on, how does the riskometer actually help, and how do women and men as well watching this show look at that as a tool to really, begin their journey of investing?
Absolutely, the most pertinent question I would say, because when we look at investing, we look at it probably a process of getting returns, while actually it is a process of managing risks. And nobody knows their risk profile from day one. Risk profiling is a journey. How much risk I can take is something which happens to me during my course of my life. And like you say, there are different stages of life. So there are times when I can take risk, and there are times where I cannot take risks, right? So it's a very, very dynamic sort of concept. And sorry, I missed out the answering this in my previous question, so I'll add it to this one. Let's look at COVID, because COVID comes across as a natural riskometer to all of us. Look at what's happened, and suddenly 6 months we are at home, and life has turned upside down. The way we looked at life and the questions we were asking ourselves about our own lives are very different to the questions we are asking now. Let's look at it from an investment perspective. We thought life was okay, and we would plan for, say, retirement, which is 30 years later, giving an example. And suddenly here comes a time where 7 years of equity returns get wiped out in 2 months. Okay, then I sit back and say, hey, maybe that was what I felt, but this is not what it is. Maybe my 23 years later will be very different to the way this has happened. So though many of us viewed equity in a certain way, but this 7 years money going away in 2 months is a new revelation to people who were probably investing for the first time, right? So something like this makes you more aware, and that is probably what has happened to us at life. And just to answer that question of what COVID can do is probably look at the way we look at the future very differently, and we'll probably incorporate such natural risks into our portfolios going forward. Maybe we will start shifting, and what we call the glide path of investing, shifting parts of our appreciation to safer assets periodically to make our financial end or the goal in a far safer process than we used to in the past, which we call the straight line financial planning. We would assume that this is a return and plan accordingly, but COVID changes that. And similarly, though at an industry level, we did have a riskometer, but the riskometer was giving each category a certain risk. But when you look at the fund management industry, every fund manager expresses himself or herself through his or her portfolios. And every portfolio is typically different. Hence, the risk of every portfolio is different from the other. What the riskometer very nicely now attempts, and I believe it's the first step towards this great attempt, is to start the discussion of risks with our investors. Till now, officially, we were running a return sort of discussion with our investors. While it is very pertinent for the investor to put both of them, while there is this sad statement that higher the risk, higher the returns, the actual reality is higher the risk, higher should be the returns. Not necessarily that you take risks and you take the returns. So in this, now what will happen, since the risk will be shown at a very scheme level, and the risk which is going to be displayed will be documented, we will be able to, in due course, also develop a very risk history of the particular scheme. So as an advisor or as an investor, it will put us in a place where we'll put both risk vis-a-vis the returns together, and the conclusion that we will have on the scheme will be far better, in a far more informed manner of what the fund or the risk the fund is taking to reach this. If you feel the fund is taking too much risk, yet the returns are not there, it's easy to now take it out of, okay, I'm getting higher returns, but there's a slight more risk compared to the peer on it. This makes it a far better tool than what it was earlier. And forget that. What I'm very happy about the new riskometer is that with the investor and our advisor community, we are officially starting the risk discussion, which is the most important part of our investing journey. So I look at it very brightly going forward, and I'm very happy, and it's a welcome change that this has happened for us. And with that, keeping that in mind, I'd like to flip it back to you, Preeti, or I'll go to Suranjana for a change. Let me go to Suranjana, and ask her, how do you think on a personal level, Suranjana, the concept of saving, investing has evolved from the time that you started your corporate journey to now?
Okay, I think, Saurabh, thanks for asking that question. Very interesting one, because it has definitely changed a lot, I think, through this entire period that I've worked in this industry. And I think I would say it has moved from like a saving to actually investing, actually understanding what investing is all about. So I think at the outset, what I've learned is that, it's very important to be able to recognize your own goals. I think every person has a different requirement of investing. Every person, like you said, the why of investing becomes very, very important. So it's very particular to people also. And then this risk part of it, which you are talking about, I think that's again something that I've recognized to, to be able to actually know what is my risk appetite. Just to, give you a perspective, that I feel that for same age group, same kind of work profile, same everything, the risk appetite that you hold is very, very particular to you. Actually, it has nothing to do with anyone else, and it has nothing to do with market risk. It's just a very, very peculiar thing to you. So I may be in the same age bracket as somebody else, but if the markets tank a lot and my investments go down, maybe I have the appetite to take it, but the other person will completely freak out. So I think that difference is very important to be recognized. And I have learned it the hard way, but yes, I have learned it. I also feel, these concepts like asset allocation, they, when it comes to, like normally it just seems like very bookish concepts. But, when actually a situation like, for instance, COVID, what we were talking, when a situation like that arises, something like this comes so much to the forefront. You suddenly, there have been a couple of these kind of things that have happened in the market in my investing time. And that's when you actually realize that, yes, these are not just concepts. It's very, very important to be able to apply them. And that's the only way that you will be able to, make money for a longer period. I really believe that, once you're able to understand these things. So I also feel it's very important, that's why, to be able to educate yourself. Yes, a lot of my friends say that because you're from, financial services, that, these things, and that's why your risk appetite is higher. But I think there are a lot of avenues available nowadays to be able to educate yourself. Yes, we are all trying to reach out to all of you, but it's also on your own. Once you start, actually reading up, actually recognizing what is it that you are okay with investing into, and what is the universe that you can actually get into. I think that becomes very important. So, I think educating, yes, it's a very, very important part of the entire thing, which I have recognized over a period. But I also feel that, when people, once you get the confidence to do the financial planning and your own investments, and then your family's investments, when you actually can come in and say that, people in your family are depending on you for, giving advice or being able to, take that step. So I think that's again important. I also feel, in our next generation, things are changing a lot. I think people are really, being able to recognize things much more, and they're much more aware now. So I think, coming to, the next generation, I just want to ask both of you this question, actually, that, I actually, on a personal note, I'm asking that, how do you think the discussion has sort of evolved for generations before you and generations after you when it comes to investing, and also, avenues of investing? And, do you think there is a trend towards more financialization of, savings going forward? I think, Swaroop, if you can take that first.
Okay. It's very interesting how we see, and every generation would say that there is a generation gap between, my father and me, or say me and my son. But I think there will be a very distinct generation gap in the investing between my generation and the next. Like Preeti rightly pointed out, when I grew up, there was this big discussion around keeping the kids out of money. And I feel very strongly for that, and financial literacy of children as another subject which needs to be discussed and talked very widely. Because I come from the East. I come from parents of 2 professors. Why I concluded they kept me out of money discussions, probably there was no money at home. That's broadly what India was, probably one decade earlier. But that's not so. And that is why the discussions on the table are there's a distinct difference between how the discussions happen on the dinner table in a business community family and a salaried family. There's no doubt or debate on that. Clearly, the business community encourages the children to handle money at a far younger age than the salaried community. And hence the kids, when they grow up, are far more equipped to handle money than, say, what I was. But thanks to my profession, I started learning a bit. But then when I thought I knew a bit, because I came from the fixed deposit background to mutual funds, and very early in my life, I sold the tech funds, which, the 10 rupees went down to 2 rupees. And I had invested a lot of money of my entire family in that fund. And then the root shock of that risk at a very early stage of my career gave me a good career learning. The other learning which it gave me was not to take your spouse or your family members' risk appetite for granted. Everybody has their own risk appetite. And that's where, the money I lost for my wife changed the discussions on the dinner table completely. Today, and I have to admit this, because at home, it's a very typical thing. Women think very structurally. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The man is 1, 2, 241, 76, 42. That's how we think. But because of her putting down that structure, I think lately our portfolios have become structured. We follow a proper asset allocation. Her portfolio is definitely more conservative than mine, and that's what she likes. So that's her money. But what we've done with our son is very different. My son is young, so his portfolio is very forward-looking. And trust me, the first thing that we do is everybody's cash, which is the consolidated account statement, goes to each person's email, so he or she knows what is the money there. And that is discussed. And please understand, if the money does not do well, I will be taken to task. There is no doubt or debate on that. And that's a job which I would like to do well for my family. But the rule that all the monies are on the table, the rule that all the monies that I earn or I don't earn is known to my wife and my son. They know in the advent of any accident, God forbid there is none, what they have to do. And it is all laid down. Who they will call, who my son will call if something happens to 2 of us, is also laid down, right? So these, when it comes to money, it is very important to keep it structured, which I've learned. It's not something which I inherited, but something which I learned. That is true for my parents also, right? Both are very clear and it's very structured. And thanks to the consolidated account statement, it's become so easy to keep track of your money. So the things that I've learned is, keep it very clear, keep it very transparent. Encourage your son, who is very reluctant for money. What I see in the next generation is there will be a far more trusting generation in financial advisors than we were, because we didn't have money. That's a separate issue. But they will do it very well. But the difference between the way my son will approach the financial advisor and, say, my niece will approach, is that my son will not know the inherent constituent of the portfolio. My niece will know. And she will take the advisor to task. So that's why I feel, going forward, the way women will impact this investing world will be dramatic. And I'm looking forward to that day. But yes, the way investing will happen will be more towards financial assets. I see no inclination of my son to buy a house, which used to be my first choice. So there'll be changes, and we'll see and see how it unfolds, because their thoughts are totally different to ours, and their thought is superior to ours.
Preeti, your thoughts on this?
Swaroop, it's so exciting to hear that, especially when you say words like her money and my money and, all of that. It's interesting to note that I think we are already, as a generation, taken that step to say that money management, and I love hearing the fact that money management, you say, is a family thing. It's not just my call. It's not, it's a joint call, but we individually manage our money and we take decisions on on the money that we earn, which is very, very heartening. And I hope, that's the way forward. I think the way I've seen it, Suranjana, is very interesting. So I would actually love to refer back to our mythology, right? Where most important ministries were held by women, right? So the wealth ministry was with goddess Lakshmi, the education was with goddess Saraswati, etc. And I think somewhere that role of women across the board, I think that kind of got a little blurred. Having said that, I think I've still seen, for me, a perfect example was my grandmother. Again, I come from a very, very humble background. My father, we've come from a middle class background, and I've seen that journey. And I've seen my grandmother really manage the money that the family used to earn, not just save it, but actually at that point in time, whatever was available in terms of instruments, whether it was to lend, making a choice of where to lend, where you get a higher interest. At that time she was doing it. And I used to always wonder, and I give the entire credit of really, like we discussed, bringing the family up because of the financial management that she did. And I'm going to specifically focus on role, the change in generations when it comes to the role of women in managing money, because, that's something that's very, very close to my heart. And for me, she was an example. Somewhere in between, I think things were lost in translation to where we are today, where we kind of feel that it's okay for us as women not to manage money. It's being managed by, either not managed, or if managed, it's okay if other people take that decision for me. To a time when, we come to the generation of, the millennials now, who look at money typically as an enabler. They have access to all the tools that are available out there to make those decisions. Increasingly, and I agree with Swaroop, I think that complete, detachment to most traditional investment classes, right? So they don't want to hold anything which needs to be taken care of, whether it is real estate, whether it is, jewelry. I have a young daughter who's least interested in putting her money into all of these. But a lot of understanding of saying, that yes, I have to grow my money. This whole notion of saying that I have my needs, my husband has his needs, and therefore we have to kind of work, and we have joint needs. So we need to kind of segregate that money and invest accordingly. That's a huge shift that I'm seeing in the millennials. I think Gen Z will be a completely different story. They have the world of artificial intelligence, which will make choices for them. That, given what you buy, what you read, where you spend, these are the things that you will need, and this is where you need to put your money. And I think that generation is also very well equipped. I have an 18-year-old son who today, I think, looks at stock markets and very actively looks at it in a completely different mindset than, the way I would look at it. And he's okay to understand stock markets, to understand mutual funds. He builds a lot of his own theory on it, and then analyzes, okay, this best meets my needs. So what if this platform is telling me this is what is best for you? So I think just from a generation of, I would say my grandmother to my mother, me, my daughter, we've come around a full circle, I think, where we are saying, okay, now women know that they need to manage money. They have a lot of tools to manage money, but the instruments that they will put their money in will be very, very different. For example, I just feel, and Lakshmi, that's what we also very strongly feel, that today, instead of putting money into real estate, etc., begin your investing journey. Start with mutual funds. The fact that you can also imagine, if you're to buy gold and real estate early on, there were large sums of money. So women never took to investing. But today you can begin in small amounts. You can do small investments. So even if it is understanding your risk profile, you're doing it with small amounts. You're learning that journey with, taking very small baby steps. You learn that journey, you learn early on. So it's opened an entire world of options, possibilities, which in fact, our tagline for Lakshmi is also multiplying possibilities, saying that today you can actually go out and invest in so many different things. And, according to what, you are investing for, why you're investing for, and what is your end goal. You have so many options to choose from. I see a world where women will be the far active investors. We've already started seeing it in the AMFI, the figures. We'll see that number increasing. We will see the AUM. And I think a world where, there will be equality. I use this term financial feminist very often. I think it's, feminism is just empty till you really have built the money power to you. And so I see a world of financial feminists going ahead. And I think that's what's really changing.
Okay. Thanks for that response. I think, yeah, very interesting perspectives. We'll just take a couple of questions from the audience as well. I just wanted to, the first question comes from Rebecca. So Arup, I'll put that to you. She says that any women, including my family members, think investment is risky. So how do you convince them?
See, let me, this statement I got in 2001, and it's been a statement which has remained.
To be able to get your clients to do that, I think is an achievement in itself. I think one more question that has come up, which Preeti, if you would like to take that, do you think it's important for women to look at mutual fund as a product? I think that's something we've sort of covered, but it also says, what is the right age to start investing?
I think the right age is, I would say the right time actually is now. The earlier you begin, you rightly said it, Suranjana. I think especially for women, the earlier you begin, the better it is, because you need more money for your retirement, for your life goals. So no age, I always say this, that it's never too early to start and it's never too late to start. So start wherever you are, just begin. I think that's most important. Take that step, small step, baby step. But as soon as you start, in an ideal world, as soon as you start earning your money, you should begin. The way I would look at it is, I used to get pocket money, I remember. And the day I turned 18, I said, okay, now I'm going to start my investing journey. Even if it is with my little pocket money, at least I'm learning. So you start investing as soon as you can.
Yeah, the earlier you start, the better it is. So
Suranjana, we say you start investing when you have the money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Best time to invest.
Yeah. I think there's also one question which says we take mutual decisions when it comes to finance. What is your thought on this? Does women taking decisions independently get busted when it comes to mutual decision? I think I'd like to make a comment on that. I think we are not trying to say that the decision doesn't need to be mutual. It has to be mutual. But I think what we are trying to convey is that women need to come into that decision making. There is a lot that is happening in your house that you are managing as a woman. You are managing a lot of important decisions even at work. But when it comes to investing, like we highlighted in the beginning of this conversation, that a lot of times the dependence is either on the father or the spouses or the brothers. I think the fact that a lot of women look up to their male counterparts to be able to take that decisions, I think it's very important to be able to recognize that we have certain characteristics which predispose us to actually become good investors. So why not take up this, the responsibility of actually understanding what investing is all about, and then go about possibly doing your own investment. So yes, decision possibly has to be mutual, but we're not saying don't involve other people, but the fact that you need to start knowing what investment world is all about is what we are trying to convey. If any of you want to add anything to that.
So there's a great...
Yes, Ranjan, let Preeti finish.
Yeah, sorry. There's a great quote by, this wonderful lady who the world just lost, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And she said, women belong in all places where decisions are made, right? And that's what I think we should keep in mind. I think in the new world order, increasingly I see there is a joint decision making on things that affect us jointly, and there is always space for an individual decision making also. I think that is the perfect world. And I think we should all strive for that, because I firmly believe that as women, we may have goals that we want to meet. Sarup just mentioned, for example, with his mother, right? She has, she had a dream, she had a goal of saying, she had a dream of saying that I want to travel. And I think you have to kind of look at your money also meeting some of your own needs. And today, increasingly, you see a lot of, I think COVID has seen so many women turn entrepreneurs, right? And today at Lakshmi, we actually get a lot of women who reach out to say that I want to take this idea that I've built during COVID to actually a business idea now, full-fledged. So to really also kind of, it's very hard for joint, monies to really work for something that you may just come up with. So I think it's also important to manage a little bit of money yourself. In fact, a lot of this question came up, there's this famous show, Indian matchmaking show, which kind of led to a lot of conversation on our community to say, where does money come into, and how important the discussion of money is. Actually, even a lot of women shy away from having that discussion itself with their prospective partner or even with their husband. And I think that is the starting point. Begin having that discussion, and you have a place to make in that decision. And of course, mutual. Yes, money is, I think, the key to long-lasting happiness, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for every woman, it's a very humble request. If they have not seen RBG on Netflix, please see it. I mean, it's if a woman wants to do something, what a woman can do is something which is reflected factually. It's just a story, and it's such an incredible story. And sometimes it does happen, and I'm talking of it from a family perspective. Traditionally, males have taken the decision of money. Let me tell you, the men have no clue of the reality of life. So my humble submission is get involved in that discussion. I'll give you a very classic example. When I was providing, or we had these goals kind of a thing, and we were talking about my son's education, I had no clue that the amount of money that will be required for my son's education, for his tuition fees, and the fees that would be required for technical training for him to qualify for the engineering entrances, or the amount of money. It was my wife coming in and saying that you have no idea, this is the actual money you will require, which changed my outlook. I thought my requirement for my son's money in education will start at a higher education level when he started his engineering. But I did not know that it will start as early as class 9, 10, 11, 12. So involve yourself in these discussions, and you will see that the investment process becomes very superior to what it is. And I do agree that the environment in the house has to be cohesive to that discussion. But, women have their way of getting that discussion to the table, and I leave it to that. And if you want that discussion to happen, I'm sure you will make it happen. But get involved in that discussion. Then you'll be amazed how different the finances of the house can become.
I think one comment from one of our viewers that such kind of platform and discussion will help women make more decisions independently. Yes, I think that is the endeavor, to reach out, to be able to tell people that, it's important to recognize what is required to be able to do these, make these investment decisions. And therefore, and people like us, we are there to help out and we are trying to reach out as much as possible. I'll just come quickly to both of you for your closing comments. I think we've crossed our time. So Swarup, any closing comments?
The comments is whenever first of all, I have to thank both of you for considering me qualified enough to start commenting or discussing such an amazing discussion or a topic which is relevant to all of us going forward, the future of the country or any country. And you see that at a level, and I can speak at length for it. The future or the standing of a country is the journey of the woman in that country. And I can talk at length on this, taking each country as an example. I believe that the Indian woman is far superior to most of the counterparts that we see globally. They are more equipped because of, the different kind of social lives that we live or the demography that we live to encounter far superior challenges than the counterparts have. We come from, our company comes from Korea, and I tell them it's so easy. You have one language, one religion, one face, no problem. When L'Oreal launched in India, they said the Indian woman needs far more makeup because they are far more emotional, they smile more, they cry more, so they will wrinkle more. Think about it from that perspective. So the Indian woman cannot be compared to any woman in the world because of the environment we live in. And just absorb that, and that is where you are superior. And the learnings that I took away from the opening statement of Preeti, because I thought it was just the job breaks which were important for women. It is very pertinent, and I compare, say, a woman to, say, a cricket player who plays for a short period of his life, and to make the best of that earning moment. There is no guarantee that a woman takes a break, can come back to working again. This is one last comment in that, women think of stashing cash as a way of investing. Demon has told us that that's not the good way. The more important way of doing it is probably keeping a bank account. And that's where I'd like to submit my final suggestion. And it starts from there. When it comes to the bank account, the process of investing starts. So I'd like to thank Preeti for giving me this incredible opportunity to be on this platform. I wish Lakshmi, and I must tell you, the biggest learning that I took away was the statement of Lakshmi that man is not your financial plan. I am floored by that statement, and it's so true. And I wish all of you great investing going forward. And I look forward to women thrashing men at investing, because Goldman Sachs says that women fund managers have been beating male fund manager by 1% return. And the ability is there, the discipline is there. You just need to do it, as simple as that.
I think Preeti, any last comments?
So I think all of us today in the world, we are striving for a better world. This is really not, we've had a long discussion about women and investing, but it's all today driven towards a better world, better community, because that's where both men and women play equal roles, right? Where we are saying that we should all come together. There was a wonderful advertisement by a washing machine company which said share the load, which was essentially driven towards the man. I think for us at Lakshmi, we totally believe that women need to take, to really get that equality, share the load of managing the money as well. And I think when they share the load, it becomes a better world, better family, better community. So the endeavor is to really have the entire ecosystem. And this is where there's huge gratitude to you, Swaroop, and to Suranjana and to Mirai to come on board, because it needs every stakeholder in the ecosystem to come together and drive this. The faster and earlier we drive it, the better it is. At the end, we may see this, it is an eventuality where you will see more and more women investors. But I think the faster and earlier we do it, it's important. And also we address, I think, break those myths, address, bring about that right financial inclusion, literacy to women. A lot of people reach out to us. People tell us, oh, you're empowering women. And I say, no, the job is really to power them, because that resides. The power is already there. You're just making them recognize that this is there. And, it's a journey when shared with wonderful partners like yourselves and every person in the entire financial services ecosystem to really make that massive change. I see a revolution coming, and I'm sure so do you, a revolution for a better world. And that's what we endeavor to. And once again, thank you so much, Swaroop, Suranjana. Thank you, Team Mirai, for, starting this conversation. And I said this on all my social media handles, that we are starting a new, Lakshmi's been doing this conversation, but today with stakeholders, we are starting this new conversation about saying why investing is so important for women.
Yes, I think the entire thought process of doing this was that, we're still a very small percentage of people who invest are female. So it's very important to be able to recognize, what you need to know, how you are, you can be confident enough to go ahead and do that. And I think, thank you so much, Preeti, for calling us here. And this is an important thing to be talked about, but possibly lesser talked about. So I think we've taken this initiative, and thank you so much for giving us this platform. And I think both of your inputs have been invaluable. I think everybody's who's watching this would take away something or the other today. But I think I just want to close with saying that because of the most important thing possibly is that because we tend to outlive men in general, so it just becomes, and with our families becoming more and more nuclear, I think it becomes more and more important that we do our retirement planning, our financial planning better and independently. Yes, with taking people, other people in the family taking their opinions, but then having that hold on it and knowing exactly where you are getting in is very important. I think a lot of times it has happened before that people, there are investments in their name and people are not even aware of it. I think that is so important to change. It's so important that people, like Swaroop also mentioned earlier, that not just stash away cash, but yes, do your investments prudently. So I think with that, I would like to close this session. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks to everybody who came and watched this, and hopefully we've made some difference to you.
And
Thank you so much.
Here, Suranjana, Swaroop, I think when we are in a better world, better times, we would love to have both of you on a coffee with our community to make mutual funds seem even more accessible and real and simple. This has been great.
That is a plan.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor.
Same here. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to all our viewers. Thank you. Bye-bye.